Thanks for once again tuning in to What's in the Box. Today we're going to take a look at Neca's 1941 Wolfman figure from the Universal Monsters. Of course, this is a highly anticipated figure for me, and I got it in months ago. I had planned to do a review, life got in the way, and maybe I was a little intimidated by a review of this figure. Wolfman is by far one of my favorite Universal monsters, along with Creature from the Black Lagoon. But emotionally, I'm attached to the Wolfman, and particularly Larry Talbot. He's such a sincere and endearing character in the film. It just kind of tugs at my heartstrings, I guess you would say. For a monster film, that's saying something. He goes from sort of a mild-mannered man obsessed with a young woman in town to this poor, pitiful guy who can't catch a break. And I kind of relate to that in a lot of ways. So, yeah, today I'm going to show you what's in the box, and hopefully you'll stick around for the full review.
A man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.
Now, being the Wolfman fan that I am, I couldn't simply have the creature itself. I also had to have Larry Talbot. And that's for good reason. I relate and connect with what Lon Chaney Jr. did in his acting style in the character of Larry. At the start of the film, he's very much happy-go-lucky, and somewhat obsessed with a young woman that he sees through a telescope downtown. And of course, he pulls his little pranks and his little things to try to get with her, and they seem to backfire for the most part. But that's only the beginning of Larry's troubles. Eventually, he does make it into town, and he is convinced to go to a fortune teller to see his and the young woman's future. Both end up accompanied by one of her friends, and it's ultimately the friend's fortune that sets things in motion. Of course, Bela Lugosi is in the film as none other than Bela, the gypsy, and he is actually the original werewolf in the film, who then eventually attacks the friend and attacks Larry, causing him the scars and bite marks that lead to his werewolfism. But it's really the film at that point that makes a connection. Larry turns a corner where he is just lost, cursed, and unsure of himself, and just not able to cope with what he's going through. He knows something's wrong. He quickly pinpoints that he is the werewolf of the town legends, and he takes it poorly. And that's where I ultimately connect with him as a character and as a person. The Wolfman is, of course, amazingly interesting, but I find Larry's realism to be the most interesting thing about it. Now, when it comes to the Wolfman and Neca's original announcement of the character, I was super excited until I saw the actual photos of the figure. They had done a couple things that just sort of did not set well with me. Now, of course, Larry and the Wolfman had a couple separate things character-wise, other than personality. Their clothing was different. The Wolfman was often dark clothes with a light belt. Larry was often light clothes with a dark belt. And as you can see here on the figure, we get sort of a mishmash. We get these sort of khaki pants that only Larry would really wear, and a darker belt, which only Larry would wear. So we kind of get this Larry body, but with Wolfman attachments. As far as you can tell in a black and white film, and of course there wasn't tons of details, tons of behind the scenes stuff at that time, you don't really know exactly what the colors of his outfit were. It's often speculated that he had either a dark green or dark blue shirt on. I prefer the blue, but that's just a personality thing. And it was often dark gray pants or black pants with a tan leather belt. So we think. It's the best guesstimate we can make, and I've done tons of research, and that's really my best guess as well. I would have liked to have seen the ability to have a more straightforward Wolfman outfit, but I understand they wanted us to have our Larry Talbot as well. And to be honest, that's why I bought two figures. I love Lon Chaney Jr. and I love Larry, and I had to have both. Now, as for the Wolfman himself, again, they announced this. Those were some initial issues. Then came the skin tone. The Wolfman's skin tone has never been flesh colored. It was always much darker. It was always similar to his fur. And they took an odd choice here. Maybe it was to make the face stand out a little bit. I'm not sure. But I can prove that because there are plenty of photos, or at least a couple photos, where the makeup is being applied and it's clearly much darker than Lon Chaney's actual skin tone and much darker than the people in photos with the Wolfman's skin tone. So it was obviously not a flesh color, and I give it a little ding there on accuracy. Accuracy in the clothing and accuracy in that sort of flesh tone color they gave him. Upon the announcement, they also gave him a mustache, which just kind of sent me into a riot on their Twitter and Facebook and Instagram posts. It's like the 1940s Wolfman, 41 Wolfman did not have a mustache, and it just looked really odd on the toy, and that was probably one of the most upsetting features about the thing. I don't know if it was me. There wasn't too many vocal proponents of this, but I threw a fit, and I believe I got them to change the mustache and possibly the belt at some point. I do believe it had a lighter belt, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, we have the figure as it stands, and Trevor Grove, the sculptor, did an amazing job with the features and the hands and the feet. It's a very cool figure despite the little issues. Of course, if you know anything about the film, Lon Chaney had a rubber piece over part of his forehead, down his nose, and over his lips. He had rubber gloves as hands, and he had rubber feet, which he sort of stood on the ball of his feet to walk as the Wolfman. And I can tell you that was probably very difficult for the amounts of filming that they did for the character. Also, the makeup took a lot of time. I've heard stories anywhere from 10 hours to 20 hours. And then you had to do sort of the time-lapse filming of the transformation, which was, excruciating on Lon. And there are even photos, although somewhat posed, of Lon kind of doubling up a fist at Jack Pierce, the makeup artist. And of course, there was word that there was some upsets on set about that as well. I don't blame him, but Lon would return to this character over and over again. As a matter of fact, many people would play Dracula, many people would play Frankenstein, but there was really only one Wolfman, and that was Lon Chaney Jr. And that really kind of gets to me because he knew what he had and he appreciated it. And I love someone that has that kind of commitment for a role. Now, the accessories, you might say, well, it's pretty sparse on the accessories. You get, of course, the silver-headed cane with the wolf head and the emblazoned pentagram, the sign of the werewolf. And it's quite well done. You can see the details, even the details that you might see in the film are on the head of this cane. In the film, Larry picks this up from the young girl in town, buys it for 15 pounds, I believe is what it was quoted at. And it is then used against Bella the werewolf and eventually Larry's father, Claude Rains, who also played the Invisible Man, beats Larry to death, or so you think, with this same cane. At that time, it wasn't just silver bullets. It was basically anything silver could kill the Wolfman. And so the cane came in handy for both Larry and his father. Then, of course, we have a classic bear trap. As you can see here, it's got a nice bit of paint on it. It's sort of a silver bronze color, and it works. You can clip the trap. You raise this little piece here, you put it down, and you clip it. Now, originally, when the hunters think, or the townsfolk think, and the police think, there is a wolf on the loose, they set these traps about and try to hunt him down. And of course, the Wolfman finds one of these traps, steps in it, and all hell ensues. He is come to the rescue by the elder gypsy woman, and they get away for the time being. These are nice little accessories. Now, the true accessory is the fact of having a Larry figure. Now let's, of course, remove Wolfman from the equation for a moment. The accessories, and we'll return to Larry himself. I love this. They gave us Larry's feet, hands, and head, and they're completely interchangeable with the Wolfman parts. For that reason, I bought 2 of these figures, and I'm glad I did. I'm a big fan of Lon Chaney and what he did in this part and a number of his other parts. At some point, he played the Mummy. At some point, he played Frankenstein. At some point, he played Dracula. He's probably the only actor in the Universal Monsters gallery that has played all the big parts at some point or another. But yeah, Trevor continues to do great work here. The feet are nice, decent articulation, hands. The look of the hands is great here. And then, of course, poor Larry's face. Trevor Grove, the sculptor, captures Lon Chaney Jr.'s emotions in the film, and that's a really great thing. And we'll look at the articulation here a little bit, since we do have Larry out. And he has all the standard Neca articulation that you would assume was there. We have ball joints in the shoulders, and that's about as far as he can go on a T-pose. He has the typical elbow articulation, hand articulation, some up and down there as well, so that's good. The head can pretty much 360 if you want it to, and then it also has a ball joint at the bottom of the neck so you can get some side-to-side movement, front to back. Then, of course, some at the waist, hips, knees, and ankles. All the same articulation that you will get on the Wolfman as well, since they both share the same body. But yeah, despite the little issues here, Larry would probably have a lighter color shirt on, definitely more of a light gray pant, and a darker belt. He does have the dark belt in this particular figure. Now we can bring these 2 back, as you can see, and they're quite cool together. I plan to probably pose them back to back a little bit, or something to that effect. But I really do enjoy the 2 figures. As I said, there are some nitpicks, colors and whatnot, but I mean, it's a black and white film, and there's really no proof of many of these things other than you can tell on black and white film that something is more of a gray, light gray tone, or a black or a dark gray tone. Color, though, is the real issue. I would have liked to have seen a blue shirt, but that's, again, just me. As far as the figure and accessories goes, plenty of stuff, especially if you account for all of Larry's features as added accessories. Again, the cane is really well done, and so is the bear/wolf trap. I can't say enough about the movie itself. I can't say enough about the figures. Do pick them up. I know they've been out for a long time now, so I'm sure many of you do have them, and congratulations. It's a great little figure. I can't wait to add this to my other Universal monsters, and I can't wait for the Creature, the Bride, and a handful of others to come out. So I'm glad you stuck around for this review and put up with my long-windedness here. But I do love the character, and I hope you do too. So until the next review, I'll catch you next time.